Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the morning, 15 minutes to change your life. Heichaltzu. I read a beautiful story yesterday that is really, it's like everything we've been learning in real life. So the story goes, there was a guy, his name was Chaim Cohen. He was the Chief Justice of the state of Israel. And unfortunately, so he used to be religious. They say and then he went to Eretz Yisrael. He learned under Chaim Cook. I think his name was Chaim Cook. He was the chief rabbi, I think, of Yerushalayim. He's a very big guy. And he ended up frying out. And it says about him that he was, and Rabbi Cook's son said, he's Rabbi Elizabeth Nadoya, which was a guy that was very frum, and he became like he fried out. And he's famous in the Gemara. It says about him, he was learning once with someone on Shabbos, and his students were learning with him. He was riding a donkey, I think it was a horse, which is not allowed on Shabbos. He was riding, and he told the student, he goes, "You can't go anymore because it's already 2,000 amas outside. It's Tchum Shabbos, outside of the boundaries of the city, and you can't walk anymore." And that's how much he was a Talmud Chacham. So that's what they said about this guy, Chaim Cohen. So Chaim Cohen, and like to appreciate, so he made a lot of the laws of the state of Israel. He was a very big, he knew how to learn, but unfortunately he went his own way. And to the extent that he got divorced, and then he wanted to get remarried. And it's, who a Kohen can marry, he can't marry a divorcee. And he ended up coming to America to get married because he couldn't get married halachically. So like he was this guy that like people had a lot of issues with him, and even more in connection with Lubavitch, he was one of the people that were against the Rebbe's campaign. That at one point, so basically they were trying in the state of Israel to push a law, which I think it's actually done, unfortunately. But basically, the concept of who is a Jew, very famous thing they call Mi Yehudi, and basically they were saying that as long as the person feels they're Jewish, that should be good enough, and they can come to and be an Israeli citizen, and we consider them Jewish. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe fought against this very hard. He spoke about this in many Farbrengens, and he was saying that it's dangerous and it's going to have so many repercussions in the negative that we should like fight it. And to the extent that last year, unfortunately, there was a Haredi couple from Eretz Yisrael, I think probably live in Misharim, and they're going to get married. So when you get married, they go through your papers, and they realized that I think the chassan wasn't even Jewish, halachically. And this is sort of what the Rebbe was campaigning against, that these issues shouldn't come up, and they were. So, and this was this Chaim Cohen. So Chaim Cohen at this stage in his life, so he's like a guy that no one likes, like in the religious circles, they're very against him. He's like everything anti. In Lubavitch, he's anti the Rebbe, and he's in. So every year on Tishrei, on Simchas Torah, on the second night in Israel, it's already Yom Tov is finished. So the people that are the Israeli consulate and people that are in Israel in the UN in New York, for them it's not Yom Tov anymore. So they would come to Simchas Torah in 77. They were invited, and there's a lot of stories, different people, like Bibi Netanyahu when he was working in the UN, and they would talk to him 45 minutes, and it's all long. And the Rebbe would sit there, the Chassidim would wait to start a kafis, and the Rebbe would speak to these people. So they invited this Chaim Cohen to come. So he's like, yeah, I'll come. So he comes in, and people already know who he is. And like, I'm very uncomfortable with this guy being here. He's like anti everything we stand for. And also, what are the rest of the Jewish world going to say? All the religious world going to see that he came into the Rebbe shul. Problem. So the Rebbe picked up that they were very uncomfortable about it. And the Rebbe said, "What's the problem? Guy comes to shul, you have to give him, whatever." So the Rebbe actually bought the Atar Eisa, and the Rebbe gave it to him to say the Atar Eisas. So you imagine in 770, one of the biggest shuls in the world, and it comes to Atar Eisa, which normally the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is giving the kibbud to this guy that he's anti-religious, he's a kohen, that he got married in a marriage he's not allowed to have. Everything he's doing is wrong. He's against the Rebbe, and he says So he says, Atar is ladas, and everyone repeats after him, all these chassidim, they come from around the world for this. And then after they finish, they go take out the tears. So the Rebbe gets the chair, asked them to give the Mashiach Sefer Torah to this guy. Mashiach Sefer Torah is a famous Sefer Torah that the Frierdiker Rebbe started wanting to write in 1941, I think it was, or 42, in the middle of the World War II. And he said, with this Sefer Torah, we're going to greet Mashiach. And it was a very muhuda, and they tried to do all these things, get specific klaf from Eretz Yisrael, and all these things. And at the end of it, we got Ba'ashkach Partis, he stopped like going. In 1970, it's completed. And this is a very famous video of it. It's heavy, heavy Torah. So in this Chaim Cohen is already old. And whoever goes says, give him the Torah. And they're like, they don't want to give him a Torah. They don't want to give him the Mashiach Sefer Torah. And it's a heavy Torah. And whoever turns to Chaim and he goes, do you take upon yourself the yoke of Torah? And so he says, yeah. So, in simple, the Rebbe is saying, meaning the heavy Torah. But and this guy he knew how to learn. He understood what the Rebbe was saying. And the Rebbe was saying the yoke meaning the Kabbalah of Torah. So he's like, yeah, whatever. So he took it. So he walked around dancing. They danced for 45 minutes, all these delegates. And they say for the 45 minutes, the Rebbe was staring at this guy, piercing blue eyes at him. And essentially, that's the story. The story finishes there. Nothing changed. The guy still was against the Rebbe with a Yehudi, and he still wanted to say, as long as you feel you're Jewish, you're good enough. And nothing externally changed. But the other story is that in the end, that there was the story goes, there was another guy, same sort of idea, same scenario, and they invited him for himself, not religious at all. He wasn't as anti as this guy, but he was not religious at all. And they said to him, "You want to come by the Rebbe? Akapish is a beautiful scene, it's memorable." He said, no, I don't want to go. They said, why? He goes, I don't want to get affected. I don't want my opinions to change. I said, what are you talking about? So he said, my good friend, Chaim Cohen, he went, and after that he said, Chaim changed. And his opinions started to change, and he said, I don't want my opinion changing. So what you see here, the story, the Rebbe affected him, but the main point of the story, what we're learning here, is that we see that even though this guy is totally against the Rebbe and against what the Rebbe stands for, and this is, I think, very connected to what we live nowadays, people have different opinions, and these are opinions that the Rebbe is fighting for tooth and nail. He sees a detriment to the Jewish world, and then it comes in the guy that's against him, and the Rebbe treats him with love and brings him in. He doesn't argue with him. He doesn't complain to him. He doesn't do anything nasty. Takes him with full love. And how is the Rebbe able to do this? It's because he looks at the neshama of the person and there's unity. Because really, like we're saying here, you're coming from the source, and the source we're all connected. And therefore, and within us, we have these opposites. And it comes out, those opposites don't divide us, but can bring us together. And the Torah can bring us together. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. A little long story, but I think it's a very powerful story. And this is sort of the message. We can take someone that we totally disagree with, but as long as they're Jewish, that's it. My brother or sister. Okay, so on page 44, and what I'm gonna do, starting Monday, I'm gonna start reading in Hebrew. I think Monday, or we finish this parak. I just feel like we'll go a little quicker and a little easier, a little flow better. But until then, we'll just continue off in this way. So we're in the bottom of page 44. So we're discussing how, we'll go from the top. So within the essence of the soul, power coalesce into total unity. For on that rung, no separate particular power exists. So we're saying in its source, we're all one. Can you reference where we are in the Hebrew? Parak Vav, halfway through the parak, it says the Sham Heim Bechinas Iskaldus Mamish. Sharei Ein Sham Koichet Pratim Kal. Because within its source, there's no defined specific pratim and specific details. It's all one. It's not even a state of essential powers above possibility of conscious expression. As the powers emerge from the soul's essence in the initial preliminary state of emanation, the soul's powers cannot be said to exist as discernible entities. So in this deep level, there's no chesed, there's no gvura. They're all sort of in their source. It's just like the drop of semen. There's nothing there. You don't see arms, head, toes, and anything like that. It's all one thing. Nonetheless, in potential, they still exist as powers, indicated by the term essential powers. Practical essential powers, it means they are powers, meaning ultimately it will come out chesed, gvura. Even in the source, they have to be there. Even this cannot be said regarding the existence of the powers with the essence of the soul. As mentioned it is inappropriate to speak of any distinct potential existing within the essence of the soul. But on the same hand, it's hard to say this, that in its source, there's these powers, because in the source, it's all oneness. So nevertheless, it's a logical imperative that the essence includes the possibility of all the powers within itself. But on the same hand, this a lot of times Chassidus does this. It's like toes this fine line. Because on one hand, you can't say there's all these separate things in the essence. On the same hand, you have to say that there's separate things in the essence. So it is and it isn't. But it has, so he's actually saying we have the potential because of the fact that later it does come out, means in potential it's already there. If all the soul powers do emanate from it, thus, if they emanate from the essence of the soul, at the very least, a potential, abstract and rarefied as it may be, for them must exist within the essence, as rare as it is, but it's there. So now we're going to discuss, try this outside a little bit. I think we'll go quicker and easier that way. So basically what he says in this note, he says, the Rashab is describing, there's two sort of levels. There's nefesh, neise, koiches, which is the soul bears its powers, and koiches, hakalun benefesh, the powers that are included in the soul. So remember, nefesh, neise, koiches, the soul bears its powers, and that's a deeper level, that in it, that it's essential, but from that can come out these powers, whereas koiches, hakalun benefesh, the powers that are included in the soul, that the powers are already there and they're included in the soul. Yeah. Exactly. Like I was saying, the nefesh neise is really as everything is one within itself. It just has the potential to come out. Whereas koiches hakaluli benefesh, that's the powers are there that are in, which is already the feeling of these separateness. That's essentially what he's saying. Yeah. And essentially what it brings out is that the ability to be able to come down, take this united one thing and come down into separate things, but those separate things become all together, like we said before. So bottom page 45. This being so, it must be said that on the level described as nefesh neisei koiches, which is the higher one, which everything is oneness, the powers are included in absolute synthesis in such a way that they are actually one. So all the levels, the chesed, the gevura, so to speak, that we're talking about this, the fire and the water, even though they're separate things, but on that level, they're all one, with no distinctions at all. You don't see the difference between them, transcending any conception of differentiation whatsoever. Just like, we talk about in the Torah, talking about Hashem in different levels. Hashem is Chanun, Merachum, and Hashem is Chesed and Gevura. You can't say God is kind. God is God. He's also kind. And that's sort of what we're saying here. And when you reach it, we're talking about this level where it's just God, just oneness. It's not the level of chesed or the level of gvura. It's the level of God. It's like within us. There's myself as I am a good friend to someone, or as I'm a healthy person, or I'm a learned person. It's not who I am. That's an expression of me. That's a much later level of me. And that's what we're saying here. That in its, we're talking about a level within the neshama, within the world, or within godliness, that there's no separation, there's no me and you and everyone else around us. It's all oneness, with no distinction at all, transcending any conception of differentiation whatsoever. The manner in which the potential of the soul's powers exists in its essence resembles the concept of Yachid. And this is sort of the idea of Yachid. Yachid means singular. It doesn't mean one, it means singular. And we'll discuss this. He's saying in Shema, which is a very interesting thing, and this is in the footnote, top of, or the middle of page 46. So this footnote, he says like this. In Shema, we say Hashem Lakeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem is one. Now, seemingly, we should say Hashem is Yachid, Hashem is singular, meaning it's only God. The whole world is only God. That would make sense, and that's really what it is. So why do we say Hashem Echad? Because the point we're trying to bring out that even in this physical world, where there's not just God, but it have the feeling of Echad, of one, meaning there's two, there's three, there's differences, there's different things, there's different. We see a world with all this physicality. Nevertheless, in Kol Zeh, we still have Yachid. We still have this oneness, this unity, this all essential oneness, and that's why we say Hashem Echad. We don't say Hashem Yachid. We say Hashem Yachid. The implication would be that there is that we don't really exist, but we see a world existence. We're saying it's not that the world exists as a separateness from God. It's in this separation. It's really all godliness. And it's a very deep level, because on one hand, because the essence level we're talking about before, it's only just godliness, it's Yachid. But when it comes down into this physical world, we're saying Hashem Echad, that even when it comes down, there's that unity. And that's what we're saying. Because in the beginning, we're saying everything is united, but then it comes down to different levels. And this Chesed, and this Gevurah, and there's all our separateness and our separate lives and things like this. But we're saying Shema, Hashem Echad, we're saying that even when it comes down through those channels and through the separations, and then you get fire and water and the Chesed and Gevurah, and everyone has different opinions, and even there's the Yachid, there's that oneness. And yeah, it's a very, very beautiful, beautiful idea. And we'll continue. We'll continue on Monday. And I think I'm going to start reading in Hebrew, and hopefully it'll go a little more smoother. Everyone should have a great Shabbos. Shabbos for Gimel Tammuz. Should have a good for rain wherever you go.